Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today I'm on Federal Hill, and behind me, below me, is the Inner Harbor, including Harborplace. And even on this gray day, the boats and the water and the promenade in the parks, it is gorgeous, and it's what we're going to talk about today. If you're following along more or less real time, you'll know that the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore are doing things like eliminating height restrictions, allowing for residential development, apartment buildings, and expanding the area that we lease at Harborplace to a private owner. There's a lot of public discussion over that, both pro and con, and we thought we would add our voice, Baltimore Heritage's voice, at least to start with this video and talk about how did we get an Inner Harbor in a Harborplace, what a group called the Urban Land Institute called a model for post-industrial waterfront development around the world. So let's jump in and jump back to the 1730s. That's when Baltimore town, all 60 acres, was getting plotted out just north of the Inner Harbor. The harbor itself, to be honest, was never a great seaport. It was too shallow. Deeper ports in Canton and Fells Point were much better suited for ocean-going vessels. Even in 1828, when the B&O Railroad got launched, it was a huge boost for the harbor. Companies were putting facilities to connect the world by boat to America by rail, but they were doing so in places like Locust Point and Canton, not so much in the Inner Harbor. The Inner Harbor, though, was a hub for Chesapeake Bay maritime activity. Ships carrying produce from the eastern shore, seafood from the bay, were coming and going all the time. On a busy day during oyster season, there might be upwards of 100 oyster boats docked at the piers along Light Street alone. So that's what was going on in the water. What about the land around the Inner Harbor? It has always been valuable. Maybe the first big development effort came in right around 1800 when the landowners just north of the harbor started filling in the area below Water Street, today's Water Street, that was all pretty much marshy, to get access to that 18-foot deep port. They built piers and docks and warehouses and really boosted the harbor, turning it into a Chesapeake Bay maritime hub. Things were going along pretty well for a number of decades, but by 1904, when the Great Fire happened, that area was pretty dilapidated. Here's what the 1904 Fire Commission had to say about it, the commission charged with rebuilding the city after the fire. It said that the area around the Inner Harbor, the warehouses were in even worse condition, many of the docks being nothing more than mud holes, and so narrow that no modern vessel of even moderate size could get beyond the ends. This is when maybe the second big step in the Inner Harbor development happened, and that's the city using its eminent domain authority to condemn the land around the harbor and make it public, take it away from private owners and turn it into publicly owned and publicly managed land. We immediately built brand new piers, and as a somewhat aside, piers 4, 5, and 6 that are here today were probably the first reinforced concrete structures built in seawater in America. Kind of neat there. And then we leased out the piers to private companies, companies like United Fruit and Standard Oil. Interestingly, even in the very beginning, we reserved at least part of one pier, the end of Pier 4, for we Baltimoreans. It was called the Public Pier. So right from the beginning, things were going along very well between 1904 and about World War II. We were again, the Inner Harbor again was a hub of maritime activity in and around the Chesapeake Bay. But after World War II, the economy changed in big ways. Maybe the biggest was with the incoming of the highways. In 1952, the Bay Bridge was completed. Farmers on the eastern shore could get their produce to Baltimore in 4 hours by truck rather than 2 to 3 days by boat. In 1960, the Marsh Market, the big public market just north of the harbor, closed. And in 1962, the steamer of the City of Norfolk made its final run. The city responded in another big way to these changes, mostly by re-envisioning the Inner Harbor from an industrial use to a new vision as a recreational use. And the first big step there came in 1963 when Mayor Theodore McKeldin expanded the urban renewal zone that had been created 5 years before that to guide the development of Charles Center. He expanded it to include the Inner Harbor. And with that, excuse me, our first big effort in this urban renewal was to demolish pretty much everything that was there and build surface parking lots. An inauspicious start to urban renewal for the Inner Harbor. But the crazy thing is that it kind of worked. Those surface parking lots became magnets for fairs and festivals. And of course, the big one being the city fair. Neighborhood after neighborhood came out to showcase their communities, their ethnic traditions, and over 10,000 people attended. The press at the time wrote very positively about the city fairs, the early years. And interestingly, they quickly made the connection on the secret sauce, the success of them being the water itself. One 1971 article states that one of the biggest attractions at the city fair that year was the docking of a tugboat. The article says, "This was the sort of thing one might see in a busy port, but seldom in Arbutus or Lutherville. This year, once again, the docks, the boats, the setting itself are the showstoppers more than the food or the booze or the rides." The water was the magic that was making this possible. The city fair has paved the way for we in Baltimore, maybe reinforced the fact that this could be a really first-class recreational center. 1971, the Rouse Company was already coming up with the idea with having marketplace pavilions here. The next big milestone was 1976, America's bicentennial, when we got over 50 tall ships from around the world and hundreds of thousands of people coming downtown to see them. The connection between the rest of the world, the maritime community coming right into downtown Baltimore was again magic. It sparked the way, or maybe reinforced the notion that this Inner Harbor could be a tourist attraction. 1976, we got the Science Center. 1981, the aquarium. We also got some not as long-lasting tourist attractions. Some of you may remember Phineas Flag, the mascot for the Victorian-themed amusement park run by Six Flags at the power plant, yes. Or the auditorium run by Ripley's Believe It or Not on Light Street. Another big year was 1978. That's when we voters in Baltimore had on the ballot a referendum of whether to move forward with leasing out part of the Inner Harbor to a private developer, what would become Harborplace. And 54% of us voted yes, and with that we got Harborplace. Harborplace, of course, opened in 1980. The first 3 months, 7 million people visited, and in the first year, more people visited the Inner Harbor than went to Disney World. Martin Millspaugh, the head of the urban renewal agency that guided this redevelopment, here's what he had to say on opening day of Harborplace. He said, "Harborplace is the missing ingredient of the Inner Harbor. Instead of a series of attractions, we'll have one massive attraction, the shoreline." Again, this idea of connecting the city to the sea being the secret sauce. The architect was Benjamin Thomas. The brainchild was James Rouse, the urban pioneer, and his colleagues at the Rouse Company. And of course, the chief cheerleader was Mayor William Donald Schaefer. The Harborplace featured local merchants, local shops, local restaurants, and was very successful in its early years. Interestingly, from surveys done during the time, 20% of the people visiting Harborplace were from outside of Maryland, and 80% of the people coming to the Harborplace were we Marylanders right from the very beginning. Even though it was successful, Harborplace changed hands a number of times. In 2004, Chicago-based General Growth Properties bought it. In 2012, New York-based Ashkenazi Acquisitions bought it. In 2019, it went into a court-ordered receivership with a manager appointed from New Jersey. And in 2022, Baltimore-based MCB Real Estate purchased the Harborplace. I'm going to wrap up and say that if you haven't been down to the Inner Harbor recently, there is a lot that is fantastic. We have a new park right here on the south side of the harbor with a skate park that is wonderful, packed during sunny days. If you haven't been in December for the Christmas market, you are missing out. But one thing that is not wonderful today is Harborplace. It is mostly empty and shuttered up, waiting for its next chapter. So as we Baltimoreans, voters, prepare to again vote on a referendum this fall on whether to move forward with zoning changes and use restrictions to allow for a potential new development, I am going to humbly suggest that one of the themes that has run through 200 years of history of the development of the Inner Harbor and Harborplace is this magic, bringing the allure of the sea right into downtown Baltimore. It's the water, it's the water, it's the water. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.